On this channel, we've told you guys that if you're a church that live streams, you should consider putting an end to it. But today we're actually gonna talk about how you do live stream, because I know there's a lot of churches, including my own, that still see it as a necessary option. So we're gonna be using OBS, which is a program that's free and it's one of the most popular ways that churches stream out there. Let's get started. Now, to be completely honest, there's so many different ways that you can live stream, and there's amazing tutorials out there that you can find on YouTube for whatever your specific situation is. This video is going to be very general, and it's going to assume that you have a camera, a computer, and you want to use OBS. We're using that as a very basic setup. So I'll show you guys how to use OBS. I'll show you how to add at least 2 cameras, assuming you want to switch camera angles while you're live streaming. And I'll show you how to add a source for things like your worship lyrics or your scripture references and stuff like that. Even though I don't have ProPresenter right in front of me, the principle will be the same thing. I'll also show you how to connect OBS to your YouTube channel so that it all integrates nicely when you're streaming to YouTube. So this is a pretty general tutorial with a really basic setup, but if you have specific questions on cameras that you're using or how to set something up specifically in OBS, let me know in the comments down below. I'll do my best to answer it, but also know there are thousands of tutorials out there using OBS for people streaming all sorts of content, and it's a great resource to just search YouTube and find more tutorials on. So step 1, download and install OBS. OBS stands for Open Broadcaster Software. It's completely free. You wanna download it directly from their website. So make sure to install that, and then we can move on from the tutorial. I'll show you what it will look like from the beginning screen to end. Okay, so when you first open OBS, it will look something like this, and it's important to note I am on PC. OBS is compatible with Macs, but I feel like it's a little bit more limited on Macs. Today's tutorial is with PC. I'm gonna be showing you guys how to add different scenes that you can switch between while you're live streaming, to switch camera angles and put different slides up and stuff like that. But something important to note right off the bat is that if your church has a video switcher, this becomes way easier. Anything that you want to show to your live stream audience has to be fed into OBS. So if you don't have a video switcher, this means that every device you add has to be added individually. Every single camera that you're gonna use, and if you have like 5 different cameras, that's gonna be difficult because they all need their own capture card, which we'll get into. If your church is like mine and you're using the same PC to run worship lyrics and ProPresenter in real life as you are streaming, you have to add a separate source for that. And the switching of camera angles and doing different things for your live stream audience specifically has to be done in OBS kind of manually, or you set up hotkeys, but it's a lot more difficult if you don't have a video switcher. With a video switcher, you can plug your soundboard and all of your cameras into there, and then you actually do all of your changes of the camera angles and putting up slides and everything from the video switcher itself, and then you hook that up to your computer, add it to OBS as its one source, and you're done. Now, video switchers are very expensive. There's also a learning curve with them, so a lot of churches don't have that option. So we're assuming you don't have a video switcher, because if you did, honestly, this tutorial wouldn't be very long. So the first thing you wanna do in OBS, whether you have a switcher or not, is figure out what settings you should be using. And OBS has a very nice tool that I do recommend. It's called the Auto Configuration Wizard. So you're gonna go up to the very top toolbar, click Tools, and then hit Auto Configuration Wizard. As you can see, it asks us what we want to be using OBS for. In this case, you would want to optimize for streaming, and recording is just secondary. So we'll click Next, and then it's gonna ask you, what do you want your base canvas to be, and your FPS. So your base canvas, most of you guys are gonna wanna be using 1920 by 1080 or 1280 by 720. Just figure out what resolution you want this to be at. It's not actually the same resolution you'll be outputting your stream to, but just figure this out and then match your output to that. FPS stands for frames per second. Most of you guys don't need to go above 30 frames. It is up to you if you want 60 frames. It's kind of a style preference, but understand that the more frames you have, the more powerful your PC and equipment kind of needs to be. So I'll leave that choice once again up to you. For today, I'm gonna go with 30 frames per second, and then we'll click Next. Next up is stream information. So you don't have to connect this to YouTube if that's not where you wanna stream, but the nice thing about OBS is it gives you an array of really popular options. You can see Twitch, YouTube, Facebook Live, Restream, or Twitter. And if you don't use any of these, or if you have a custom one, you can pick that. But OBS will give you your own stream key, and any streaming platform that I can think of asks for a specific stream key. So if you have one of the options that's not listed here, it will still give you a stream key that you can enter there and it will connect just fine. But today we're going with YouTube. I would leave these two boxes checked. Estimate bitrate, that's something we could go over, but essentially your bitrate is the rate of the data that you're sending to your live stream and how much you want to be doing that, at what rate. And so basically the higher that it is, you're gonna be sending a lot of data and the quality will look really good, but it might lag behind and have difficulty and you might have stuttering and buffering, so it can cause issues. If it's too low, you won't have any stuttering or lag necessarily, but it's gonna look pixelated and have issues. So how do you figure out the correct bitrate for your stream? I would just let OBS tell you. So if you leave this box checked, it's gonna estimate your bitrate based off of your internet speed and your system requirements of your computer. So I would do this with the computer that you actually plan to stream from. Don't like set all this up from home just to test it and then go and expect it to be exactly the same on a different computer. So we'll leave all of this checked, and then I'm actually gonna connect my account to YouTube to show you guys how this would work if you're doing it with your church's YouTube channel. Now, I didn't want to show my login information, but the only thing that you missed is it asked for authorization. So it brought up my church's Gmail account that the YouTube channel is associated with, and all I had to do was click authorize and we can move forward now. And as you can see, it connected my account, Chapel Valley, that's my church. We'll click next. Now it's gonna be performing the rest of its auto configuration wizard. So this is trying to figure out what settings you should be using. And don't worry, it won't lock you into these settings. It's just trying to get you like a base ground to start with, and you can actually manually tweak things if you don't agree with the suggestions that it has. But this is gonna help you with things like bitrate. So here you go. It gives you a report of everything that it suggests to do, and then you can just hit apply settings if you agree with those. And then if you don't, honestly, you can just go down here to settings and tweak everything, but we'll get to that later. Now it automatically opened a YouTube chat window. That's what this is about, but it's gonna get confusing if it sits there. So I'm just gonna close this window. Okay, now we are finally ready to add our first scene. So to add a scene, what we're gonna do is go down to this first box here on the bottom left where it says scenes, and we're gonna hit the little plus symbol. At this point, it will ask us what we want the scene to be titled. In this case, I'm gonna call this the wide angle. All I want on this scene is a wide shot of my pastor on the stage, for example, right? And as you can tell, I'm not in a church, so we're gonna have to use our imagination as I'm just in my house. But the principle is still the same. So we need to add our camera as a source, and OBS is going to be able to tell what you have available as a source based on what you have hooked up to your computer. So how do you get your camera hooked up to your computer so OBS knows what it is? Today, our wide angle camera is gonna be this DSLR. It's a Canon 70D, it's an old one, but any camera that you're using probably has a video out of some sort. This one has a mini HDMI out, so we're gonna plug that in here, and then the other end is going to go into a capture card, which you're going to need for your computer to get this video signal. There's tons of capture cards out there. I recommend the Cam Links. They're really easy. One end is a USB that plugs into your computer, and the other end is where the HDMI to your camera comes from. So you just plug that in, and you plug this straight into your computer, and it will recognize it, which we'll see in just a second. At the time of recording, Cam Links are about $100 a pop. There are cheaper capture cards out there, and the only difference I've seen from the cheaper ones is you do lose quality and color, but if you really are just trying to get your live stream up and running and you don't care too much about the production value of it, the cheaper capture cards should work just fine. Now, if you have like 4 different cameras and each one has to be hooked up to your computer, I wouldn't recommend getting a Cam Link for every single camera. They do have internal capture cards that you can install into your PC, and they have like 4 different inputs. But be aware, the more that you hook up to your live stream, the more cameras you add to OBS, the more powerful your machine is gonna have to be, or it might start having issues, because you're asking it to do a lot of stuff. Again, that's a pro of having a video switcher. But I'm gonna take this HDMI and plug it into my Cam Link, which is gonna go to my computer, and then I'm gonna plug the other end of this HDMI into my camera in the back of the room, and we'll add it as our first camera in OBS. All right, I got my camera set up in the back and it's plugged into my computer. Let's add it as a source. So all we have to do is go to the sources box, which is the second box over here, and we're gonna hit the plus symbol, and we wanna add a video capture device. From here, we're gonna call this our wide camera. You can title it whatever you want that makes sense. And it will bring up this menu. So the first thing you wanna do is tell it what device you want it to be using. Now, it's not gonna detect what your actual camera name is, it's gonna detect the capture card that you plugged in to your computer. So in this case, that Cam Link is the one that we want. And if I drop down this little drop box here, we should see it somewhere. There it is, Cam Link 4K. And boom, there it is, it pops up. Now, the rest of this menu, You can mess with it if you want a specific resolution or FPS type if you know what you want to be streaming to. So let's say, I don't know, 1920 by 1080 since that's our only option apparently. And for FPS, remember we want it at 30 frames in this case, and 29.97, that will work. For the rest of this, I'm actually gonna leave it at default for today's tutorial. You can mess around with color space and color range if you know the specifics of your camera, but default is gonna be fine for our case today. And I wanna leave the rest of these settings completed as well. I'll hit OK, and look, we have our first camera angle. It's out of focus, so let me switch that and I'll also touch on something else. We'll adjust it here. That looks a little better. That's much better. And then I'll adjust the angle of it as well. Okay, so I got it added. It's a lot more in focus now. You guys can see me talking to you right now in this camera from back there, which is pretty cool, right? And something I wanted to add is that you may have to kind of play with how it looks on your screen. See how I have this black border around here? So I actually am just gonna grab this wide angle and I'm gonna fill it to the full screen here, just like that. The other thing to note is a lot of you guys might have icons around the screen, like your shutter speed, your ISO, your aperture, things like that. It depends on the camera, obviously, but most of them have the option to get rid of those icons. On these Canons, all I have to do is hit the info button twice. So now we have our wide angle camera set up with our wide angle scene. And the only other thing to note is that every single device you add to OBS is going to give you the audio of that device. So in this case, I don't want this camera's audio to be picked up and put in the live stream. It's not very good just being the microphone on the camera itself. It's super far away from the pastor. That's not the audio I want. I want my audio to come from the soundboard. So what I'm gonna do is bring this all the way down so it's at 0, or alternatively, you could just mute it by clicking this little speaker icon. Now let's move on to adding our close-up shot of our pastor. So now we're gonna add another scene as our close-up camera, okay? And we're gonna call it like our zoomed in angle, I guess, or something like that. So in order to do that, we need to add a new scene, and we're gonna call this close-up. So this is a completely new scene. It got rid of our wide angle, as you can see. And for this, I'm going to add a video capture device just like I did before. And we'll call this close-up camera. So this will bring up the same menu we saw before. And so we're gonna go to device. And this time I actually have to use one of my webcams for an example, which is called the HD Pro Webcam C920. It's the second one here. And boom, there I am, sitting right in front of my computer, and you can see our wide angle camera back there as well. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm gonna leave all of the settings except for one at default because all of your cameras are different and it would kind of be useless for me to spend time showing you how I make this specific webcam look good. But it is important to note you do want your resolution to be matching whatever you're streaming at. In my case, 1920 by 1080, and there we go. Takes up the whole screen. This is our close-up shot. For our third scene, we're gonna be adding our presentation software, which is things like ProPresenter or Easy Worship or whatever you might be using. After all, we want our online audience to see when our pastor is referencing a specific scripture, and for our worship, we want them to see the lyrics, right? So if your church is like mine, you're actually using the same computer that runs ProPresenter as you are streaming from OBS. So in order to add ProPresenter, we're gonna add the display that we're sending ProPresenter to. No matter what presentation software you use, if you go into the preferences and you look at the displays, it will probably tell you what display you are actually presenting on. And that's the same display that you want to add in OBS. Now, I don't have ProPresenter specifically on this computer that I'm using for this tutorial, but I am gonna show you worship lyrics and I am gonna show you the same display capture that you would add anyways, and the principle still applies. So we'll go over to our third scene, and once again, we're gonna hit the plus symbol, and we'll call this presentation software. Again, you can title these whatever you want. So this is very similar to how you would add a camera, but instead of adding a video capture device, we're gonna add a display capture. So we'll go to this plus symbol under sources and add display capture. And we'll call it ProPresenter. You can leave the capture method at automatic, but you can see it's already detected the display I was gonna use. But this display drop box, this is asking you what display or what monitor, you can think of it that way, you want to be using. So this is going to capture the entire display. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you're not having like Gmail open or moving your mouse around on that monitor, because your online audience is gonna see all that. But this is the display I wanna use for today's example. This would be the same display that ProPresenter is displaying to. So we'll click OK, and boom. This is gonna be our example for ProPresenter today. So now I have my wide angle, my close-up shot, and my presentation software. But the one thing we didn't add is our audio. In order to get your audio into your live stream, once again, it has to be something that's plugged into your computer. And most of you guys have like your worship team and your pastor's microphone and everything going through some type of soundboard that you're adjusting, right? And it's coming through your house speakers and everything like that. So you wanna take the audio out that is on your soundboard and you wanna plug it into one of two things. The cheaper and not ideal option is a interface. This is something that the audio out from your soundboard will plug into, similar to these capture devices for the cameras, and then that is going to plug into your computer. And then you just tell OBS to add that as an audio device. The second ideal but more expensive option is another soundboard. Again, live streaming is such a complicated subject with so many different factors involved. Audio specifically, I highly suggest this video that I'm showing right now to learn more about it, but that's kind of the basis of how you add audio into your OBS. You need either an interface or a soundboard, or additional soundboard, I should say. So today I'm gonna pretend that I have an audio interface and I'm gonna go down to this plus symbol under sources and I would add audio input capture. And we'll just title this our soundboard for today. This will bring up this menu and you just tell it what device you're picking. And remember, this is gonna be either your soundboard or your interface. I don't have either of those with me today, so we're just going to pretend, and I'm gonna click one of my other webcams since it has a microphone on it and it will show us audio so you can see what it'll look like. We'll click OK. And now we have soundboard and it's showing us that it has its own audio level, okay? Now, no matter what our online audience is seeing, I want them to be able to hear everything that's happening through our soundboard, because our sound guy is making sure to mute microphones or do audio transitions and everything like that. So I want our online audience to be able to hear anything happening on our soundboard just as our real life audience would hear. That means that when I'm switching between camera angles and everything like that, I want it to be consistent no matter what we're showing. And you'll notice we added the soundboard to our presentation software scene. This means we also should add it to our close-up camera and our wide angle, so no matter what we're switching between, people will be able to hear our soundboard because it's on every single scene. So I'm gonna switch to close-up camera angle, and I'm gonna go to add audio input capture once again. But this time, instead of creating a new one, we can just switch to this add existing option and click soundboard. And this will save all our settings and everything, and it already knows the source that we're using, and boom, look at that. It's already on the scene. It even has the same level audio or the volume slider as the previous scene. And now we need to add the soundboard to the wide angle scene. So once again, we'll switch to the wide angle scene. We'll go to add audio input capture, and then we're gonna add existing soundboard. And boom, now the soundboard is on every single scene. Again, make sure that every single scene only has audio in the audio mixer that you actually want coming through. So like this close-up camera, the volume's all the way up for that. That's not what I want. So I'm actually gonna drag this all the way down, and then I'm gonna click mute just to be safe. And if I check presentation software, the soundboard is the only one. But that's just a quick reminder to make sure that all the audio sources are muted other than the ones that you want to actually come through in your audio mixer section. Because again, your live stream audience is gonna hear anything that's showing here. So now we have all of our camera angles set up and our soundboard and our presentation software. So if we were to be streaming right now, I could effortlessly just switch between these as I wanted to switch camera angles. As the pastor's talking, just like this, if this is our wide angle shot, if this is our close-up shot, if this is our worship or our scripture references, for example, we could easily seamlessly switch between all of them. And if you don't like this kind of dissolve effect that it does that little fade. If you don't like that, you can simply just go to scene transitions here and change that from fade to cut. And now it just instantly changes. There's no dissolve or anything like that. But I personally like the fade, so I'm gonna keep it. If you don't see scene transitions as an option, all you need to do is go up to docks here at the top on the toolbar, and then just make sure that scene transitions is checked. That will bring it up as a window. And by the way, you can move these windows around however you want. So if you want scene transitions here, sources over here, whatever you want to do, OBS lets you move things around very easily. But I'm gonna move these back and we're good to go there. So we've got all of our scenes set, our audio added, we're good to go. How do we actually stream? Well, first of all, I would advise you to actually record and do a practice session. The nice thing about OBS is it's not just used for streaming, it's used for screen recording as well. So you can actually click start recording down here and record an entire session. Just do a practice service and see how it goes. You might run into some issues that you never even thought about before, and that way you can practice and get good. Once you're good on that and you wanna learn how to start streaming, you can move on to this next step. If you remember at the beginning, we actually connected our YouTube account, but if you skip that step or if you wanna look at a couple more details related to streaming specifically, you can go down to the settings window. So let's open that up. So if we click on output, there's all sorts of things you can mess with here. I highly suggest just immediately changing this to advanced. If your computer has an NVIDIA graphics card, you will see an option in this video encoder section here, this drop box, and it will be an NVIDIA option. I highly suggest, if you have it, to switch to NVIDIA H.264. This will put all of the stress of streaming onto your graphics card rather than your processor. And your processor kind of needs to be freed up in order to have a really easy stream. If you don't, you're probably gonna have to leave this at X264. But again, that configuration wizard that we did at the beginning, it's also going to help with what it suggests as a video encoder, and I would just go with its recommendation. But if you didn't do the setup wizard or if you had issues with it, the two options would either be an NVIDIA option or an X264. But I'm gonna leave it at this NVIDIA H.264 option. If you don't know what your bitrate should be, just run an internet speed test, which is free on Google. Just type internet speed test, it'll be the first thing that pops up. You can run your speed test and then Google what should my bitrate be with this amount of speed. And it'll actually give you a good range and just put it into the bitrate section here. But again, the configuration wizard will have a suggested bitrate that you can just keep it at if you want. Now this section also, if you go up to recording, this shows you where your recordings are gonna go. So how I said earlier that you should record a session for practice, this recording path right here, this is where you would change if you want that video to be done and then live somewhere in your computer, you would change it here. But that's everything we're gonna touch in the output section. Now let's move on to video. So we're gonna click video. And here, I don't actually have to touch anything, but just check that your base canvas resolution is the same that you're outputting to. Just a personal recommendation. Some of you guys might find better results if you stream at 1280 by 720, not quite 1080, so that's up to you, but I would only change the output here, not the base resolution, because most standard things that you're gonna be putting into OBS do have 1920 by 1080 as the resolution. And then the last thing we're gonna do is go to stream. As I said earlier, it's already connected to my YouTube account, so I don't have to do anything here. But if you wanted to connect a different streaming service or anything like that, you can do it in this screen. And we should be good to go. I'm gonna click OK now. So now I'm ready to stream, and this could be an entire video in itself, but if you are using YouTube, I highly recommend setting up your broadcast or your stream ahead of time. Here I'm logged into YouTube, and I'm just gonna go up to this little camera icon, and then I'm gonna click Go Live. This brings me to YouTube Studio, and you either won't have anything here in the little Manage tab that I'm looking at, or you'll be on this Stream tab. So if I show you the Stream tab, it's gonna be all sorts of confusing and look all kind of crazy. But this is kind of YouTube's side of your stream. What I recommend doing is going back to this Manage tab here, and then scheduling a stream here in the top right. From here, you probably only have the option to create a new stream, but you're gonna hit create new, you're gonna title your message, add a description, tell YouTube when you actually want to stream, set a date and time and everything like that, and then click save. So these are all scheduled streams that my church currently has ready to go. Now the reason that's important is because if you remember, in OBS, we linked our account. So if we go back to OBS and we're ready to stream, all we have to do now is go to Manage Broadcast here. That will bring up this screen, and it actually wants us to set up a new stream from scratch. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna go to select existing broadcast since it's already connected to our YouTube channel. From here, we can see all the same streams that I just showed you guys because our YouTube channel is connected to it, and I would just click one, and then from here, all I would have to do is I can either select broadcast and kind of get it ready to go, or if I'm like really ready to just stream right here, you can hit select broadcast and start streaming. But I usually just kind of arm it, so we're gonna select broadcast. All right, so now OBS is ready to go. It knows exactly what stream to use, and it's ready to start, and you would be good to go. All you would have to do is click start streaming. I'm not actually gonna do that for this tutorial because my church is not streaming and I don't wanna go live on our YouTube channel with just me sitting in my house. I don't think that would be something that my pastor would be thrilled about. But that really is the last step. So again, you guys, this is a very general tutorial and a very basic setup, but I do hope that it helped you grasp the concept, at least how to get started in OBS with adding some devices and streaming to your church service. With all of the different equipment that churches use and all the different streaming platforms out there are so many different ways that you can stream your live service. So again, if you have specific questions, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below so I can do my best to at least answer them myself or point you in the correct direction. But I do hope that you guys found this video helpful, and if you did, make sure to hit like and subscribe because we like to help churches out just like yours all the time with the content that we put out. We'll see you in the next one.